Welcome into a brand new edition of ACC Baseball Etc. presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Prepare for takeoff because Academy Sports and Outdoors is your new home for Jordan Brand. Gear up today and take flight on the court, off the court, and above the court. Make your play in the latest head-to-toe Jordan gear for the entire family, available in-store and at academy.com. Elevated styles and shoes for everyone. Unstoppable value every day. Unleash your greatness with Jordan at Academy Sports and Outdoors. We got a lot to get into. I'm Daron Vaught. Bradley Smart of ACC Extra is with me, in part because Danny Graves not available to come on and talk this week, but also as a reminder that if you are not plugged in with ACC Extra, in addition to your D1Baseball.com subscription, you got to make that happen because my guy Bradley is doing very, very good work over there. Be Smart, what's going on? How are we?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thanks for the kind introduction as always. And yeah, I would definitely recommend ACC Extra with the tournament coming up. We got a lot of good things planned for that. But I'm doing well. Everything that happened in the ACC this weekend was partially opposite of what I might have expected. So there's just endless storylines to discuss this week.
Yeah, let's start there because I joked with Shotgun Spratling on his sidearm delivery pod over on the D1 Baseball proper feed last week that, you know, because we were where we were with NC State thinking, this might even be the best team in the ACC. They're like the hottest team in the country. I said, because of where we were with them, you just knew Miami was going to go in and sweep. And it didn't quite happen. It wasn't 3 games worth of a sweep. The third one got canceled. They got the first 2. But it sort of happened. And I mean, I was saying that half jokingly, even knowing Miami was on this scorcher that they're on as well. But yeah, it's fascinating how, and it kind of happened this way across the country, not just in the ACC. It was sort of the opposite of what you might reasonably predict is what happened. And as a result, over on the D1 Baseball Top 25 release, there's quite a bit of heat because Texas, despite losing a series in pretty convincing fashion, remains number 1 in the D1 Top 25. So it wasn't just the ACC, which is both comforting and maybe a little alarming. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of something that's played out in both the ACC and the SEC a bit. Obviously, Texas getting swept was a surprise. But like for the ACC in particular, Pitt taking that series from Virginia Tech meant you can draw a complete circle now of every team beating another team just in a circle. And so you just get these week-to-week changes where it's just really, really hard to predict who exactly is going to show up and what's going to happen there.
We nearly completed one of those a couple of years ago in the first year of this show's existence. Danny and I talked a lot about the circle of parity / chaos, I think is what I called it. But Wake Forest kept us from completing that because they wouldn't lose to anybody during the season. So yeah, very, very pleased that we've got a circle of parity / chaos. I love nothing more than that. Let's start with your impressions or where you took the most of an impression in a singular series, Bradley. Like where would you start?
Yeah, I mean, I think we got to start with the top 5 matchup, Florida State and Clemson, and it delivered. I think it was one of those series where you hear that phrase like super regional atmosphere, like that gets thrown out a lot anytime 2 good teams play. But that was really the case in this weekend, especially in the opener. You know, you have the marching band in the stands. You have a great crowd, and you just have an unbelievable game. Like I wrote about it the next day, game of the year candidate. Like you had so many twists and turns in that to the fact that, Florida State even won that where, you're going into the 9th inning, you're losing. Clemson has Lucas Malstead on the mound, who has not blown a save all year, 15 for 15, best reliever in the country by the numbers. And not only do you, with 2 outs, tie it, you go down again in extras, you come back, you tie it again, and then you finally win, in 11. And I think that game alone would have been incredible. But then the next two had, just no shortage of excitement. So, that was the one I was pretty glued to all weekend, I'd say.
Did it say anything about Clemson to you?
I mean, the Friday game, I think Eric Bakich actually said it best. It's like, Malstead's been our dude like all year. Like, he has not faltered once. And so that's a tough pill to swallow. They came back and won that second game kind of in, classic Clemson fashion where, they're down late and, rain starts pouring. They hadn't gotten anything against Joey Vellini. And, they're able to push across some runs in chaotic fashion and carry that momentum over to finish the game out, the next day. But I think the Sunday loss did say something we've been saying about Clemson, a lot is pitching depth, starting pitching depth, really, because they had to go because of Malstead sort of in that late inning stuff. BJ Bailey came out on Friday, and he'd been kind of their stretched out Sunday guy. And so then they started Talon Bell, didn't really have it. Wouldn't have expected a long outing anyway. And then they went back to Bailey, and he wasn't sharp. So you kind of got that question of, does Clemson have enough length, in their starting pitching? But again, that's not a new question. We've been asking that of the Tigers pretty much all year.
Yeah, my one takeaway is rather specific, and I have been on the record as to saying I don't quite know how Clemson does it, but I think they're really good at winning games, and that's the most important thing. Lucas Malstead, again, it's one time he was actually affected in an outing. But I think there's a reason. FSU just has a bunch of lefties you can run out against him. And for whatever reason, those are the guys that hit Malstead, whether it's, a longer look at it coming from the opposite side. And then they just had kind of a patient approach, right? And you just take him backside. And so I think that if you get into a late situation against Clemson, which you're probably gonna, because those are the types of games that they play, I think that is your only chance against him specifically is, hey, you got any left-handed hitters on the bench? Cool. Throw them in, and let them face him. I still have conviction with both of these teams. And I think Clemson is they win. And that leads me to believe that they, even though Florida State just beat them in a series, they are maybe the most likely. I think they're both Omaha teams, but that depends on paths and all that. We've got to see how that is bracketed out. But I feel good about both. It is, I guess, the moral of the story, which I think should be the case for everybody. I can't imagine someone would not. As a listener to this show, as a fan of college baseball, a fan of the ACC, I think those are still the league's top two teams.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good take. I think Florida State fans are still just incredibly concerned about their bullpen. Like, when they lost that second game, you should have seen, the replies on social media. Season's over. Like cancel it. And to be fair, it did not look good in the third game. They were up 10-0, well on their way to a run rule, which I will say they did pull off. But Clemson went on a 9-1 run. Again, that's what Clemson does. They did it to Florida State last year. I'm sure there was some, past trauma being relived as Clemson started climbing back into that game. But I do think that's a fair, concern around Florida State is, can they get enough consistency out of the bullpen? But that's really the only question. When you look at what the rotation can do, Arnold and Vellini were great. Vellini was kind of unlucky with that weather burst because he was dealing as efficient as he's been, all year. And then in that Sunday game, they took Clemson's best punch back. I think it ended up being a 2-run game. And then six guys hit home runs. that Florida State lineup can just erupt. Like Drew Farrow, or five guys. Sorry, Drew Farrow hit 2.
Yeah.
Miles Bailey, just grown man, home run, hang time, unbelievable. You have Alex Lodis, Max Williams. Like that lineup can do things like that just in a hurry. Like they took an 11-9 game and ruled them 20-9. Like I think that's a big takeaway for Florida State, where it's like, yep, there's going to be some blips in the bullpen, but you've got a really good offense and you have a really good rotation. And you have some guys that can get the outs. Like Peyton Prescott had a good outing on Friday. Joe Charles bounced back from Friday to, close out that Sunday game. So I think you're spot on. And these are the two teams where it's like, yes, they have the goods to go quite a ways.
Yeah. Flipping it back to Clemson to wrap up on this series, which game 1 should win an Oscar. Like it was it's an overused phrase to call it absolute cinema, but it was theater. It was great. So Cam Cannarella doing what Cam Cannarella does again. And I've seen it in some quotes from people who we would probably trust with such things. I've seen it speculated and kind of tossed around. So I figured we would do it here. Are we in the territory where we got to talk about Cannarella as being, the best defensive center fielder in college baseball history?
He does things on a regular basis that most players would have a hard time doing, and he does them like routinely. Like that catch in center, that is the catch to Rob Lodis in a huge spot, also denying back-to-back home runs, and then he comes in bottom of the frame and inside the park Little League home run to flip the score. But the way he just goes up and gets that, it's like a carbon copy of easier difficulty than the catch the other week. But I just don't quite get how he makes it look so effortless. And we've been blessed with some, unbelievable defensive center fielders like Sal Frelick, Vance Honeycutt. And I don't know how to stack them up because they were all just so good. But Cam makes those catches just like Honeycutt did it a bunch last year too, where it's just like you just tip your cap. Like the camera cutting to Alex Lodis as he was like on second base, vacant expression. It wasn't even like, oh, like tip your cap or disappointment. It was just, there was just nothing. It was just like, yep. He's like,
Cam Cannarella's out there in center and I hit it to center field. So what can I really expect? What I love about, and you mentioned him, Frelick and Honeycutt for sure, two of the best that we have seen in the ACC. What I like about Cannarella is how athletic he looks. And you mentioned some catches do look particularly easy. But if I'm thinking about the over-the-shoulder, into the wall last year in the postseason, not that it looked difficult, but it's just so athletic because it's not a clean catch. It's not timing it perfectly to where it's in the glove and, smooth necessarily, as much as it is, okay, the dude is playing wide receiver and he's just pulling it in however he can. I love that some of Cam's look that way, as even as scary as they would be if another replacement level center fielder was making those plays. He's just so much fun to watch. I think he might be the most fun to watch. And that's after it includes his offense too, when I said this, but that's after coming off of last year. I had this realization. I was like, oh, I think Vance Honeycutt's one of my favorite college baseball players ever. And like, that is a spot that had been reserved for a long time for not new players. You know what I mean? Like, just like the way that we live with that. I was like, oh yeah, Jackie Bradley Jr. and Khalil Green are my favorite players ever. And I hadn't added anyone to that upper echelon in a long time. So I came to the realization that I was like, okay, I think Honeycutt's there last year. Cam might be in that territory too. I just, he's been a blast to watch, and I'm glad he's hitting a stride, it seems, offensively too, a bit more of a stride toward the stretch run for Clemson here to hopefully help impact a long run for them. So yeah, I didn't know that we would come to anything conclusive, but I figured it was worth just kind of like batting around.
Yeah, I mean the last thing with Cam too is it's such a cliche, but it's just like rising to the moment. Like it just feels like in any big game he does something. Like, it's not just robbing a home run in like a midweek game or something. It's almost as if when everyone's watching, and Eric Baggett just said the same thing. He just elevates his game just a bit. Like he just rises to the occasion. And obviously he did that against Florida State.
Yeah, great series. Really fun to watch this weekend, as were the Miami Hurricanes. They are on an absolute tear. And AJ Siskar was my vote for ACC Pitcher of the Week, actually. That game one against NC State over the weekend, Daniel Cuvée, 2 home runs, Jake Ogden steals home. I mean, like, everything is coming up Miami. They're just – I made one note about Cuvé's 2 homers, and then I'll let you just kind of like brain dump on us. I thought it was hilarious. Cuvé's 2 home runs, the launch angles were, I think I've got 18 degrees and 41 degrees written down. And I don't know that I've ever seen a discrepancy like that in a singular game for a hitter. It's that, like, that was remarkable. That's a little baseball nerdy thing, but man, Miami is they just keep doing it. Like it's been a completely different team.
Yeah. I mean, we talked at the start about how, everyone's beating everyone. And, I think it's like 3.5 games separate first from 11th in the league. So with that being said, you know how hard it is to win 10 ACC games in a row? Like, that's just unbelievable. It doesn't matter who you're playing in the ACC. To win that many in a row, like, they're just a buzzsaw. And I think it's I saw them sweep in person BC, and it's just like Daniel Cuvée is not someone you want to pitch to right now. But the problem is you have Ogden, and then Max Galvin in front of him. They're both hitting really well. And then you have Dorian Gonzalez behind him. So he has some protection. Like it's a group of 4 that's all hitting pretty well right now. And so they're, I was kind of bummed that third game got rained out because I really wanted to see how NC State pitched Cuvée in the third game. Because he went 5 for 6 with 2 doubles, 2 home runs, 8 RBIs in 2 games. And that first home run was just like 111 miles per hour at that launch angle. Like, just a little lower, and he's gonna kill the pitcher. Like, that's just absolutely smoked. So yeah, he's seeing the ball great, and they're just it really goes back to that, and I think I might have talked about it on here, but that rotation change. Brian Walters is an excellent closer, and that was on display on Friday in game 1 when he started 97, 98, swinging strikeout to end the game, 7 save and 7 opportunities. He's just like his brother, like just a lockdown closer. And then Siskar and Darius, who was pitching well before the rain came in, those 2 coming in around Hughes, like, it's not a surprise they're winning as much as they are with consistent pitching, settled roles, and Cuvée being like Barry Bonds at the moment.
I've said it. I love that their success has come because of an emergence of that freshman class. Just with the way that they built coming into this season, it was like, okay, we're just going to be a totally new group of guys. Half of them are going to be transfers, half of them are going to be freshmen. And you lean on the experience at the start of the season, right? So the transfers and the guys who are more tenured with the program get the opportunities. But now they get halfway through this season and they feel comfortable with certain freshmen getting more opportunities. And that's what has elevated them. which again, it is maybe contrary to the way we thought this was going to succeed for JD Arteaga. If it was going to succeed, you know what I mean? It was at first it's kind of like, oh, it's very 2025 of them mishmashing a bunch of transfers. We'll see if it works. And we kind of overlooked the freshman class, but it's a really, really good freshman class. And again, if they as a program can retain these guys going into next year and the next year, like the sky's the limit for Miami. And it's very possible JD could get them to the point where, you know, they're Miami baseball again, which is his goal, obviously.
Yeah. And I mean, what's also really impressive about this stretch is Derek Williams. I don't think he played again this weekend. Was like the transfer they'd really hit on. Like he was hitting really well. Obviously Ogden and Galvin as well, but that was kind of the recipe while Cuvée was he was hitting well, but just not doing Cuvée things yet. But now you kind of have everything, even without him, you have everything kind of clicking in the lineup. And I think that point about freshmen is a great one. Because, yeah, at the start of the year, Siskar and Darius were bullpen arms, and they were throwing well, but they stretched them out. And obviously Nick Robert, has surgery. Walters he can't maintain his velocity, which is very fair. He's been a reliever his whole career at Miami. And so I think it's been impressive to see the adjustments made, because you could have easily just kept going. Walters has had some good starts, could have sort of kept the lineup. But it's been great to see them turn around, because I think this is also something repeated often, but it's good for baseball when Miami's good, because that's just such a historic program. And it's really fun to watch them right now.
It brings something up that we haven't really talked about. What's the pecking order for ACC Coach of the Year at this point? Because I think what you just alluded to is coaching decisions. It's coaching. It's bringing guys along as the season goes along, being willing to and making adjustments. Like, I think JD's got a pretty good case.
Yeah. I think that is a good. I haven't really thought about that yet.
I hadn't until you just started talking about it. So now, I mean, I think obviously Eric Bakich is in play. Link for sure, just because those are the two more successful teams. I guess with record and success, Scott Forbes is, just by virtue of the season North Carolina's having, is in this conversation. I don't know. Maybe those are the four. Elliot Avent's got a case. Like, this is who knows what it's going to turn out to be.
Yeah, well, it kind of comes down to, like, how do you view the Coach of the Year award? And I think it kind of goes into two camps, where it's my belief is Coach of the Year, you could give it to the best coach every year of the best team. Like, that'd be the easy thing to do.
Right. Whoever finishes first in the conference. It's not like that coach never has a case or ever doesn't have a case. For Coach of the Year.
For sure. And I kind of fall more into, like, did they go through some adversity? Did they have to overcome some things? And I think Miami's a golden example of that. I'd agree. I think Arteaga made changes that were probably hard, like going into that North Carolina series, taking Nick Robert out of the rotation, moving Hugus up. Like, that's a tough decision to make. So I think Arteaga definitely has a case. I think Avent, even though the expectations were really high, I think they've done a really good job of bringing in the right pieces and moving on and shuffling things around some. So I could definitely see that. I think North Carolina is a hard one, because when you return the depth on the mound that you do, like, that's the luxury every ACC coach wants. But they have had to shuffle some things, so I could see that as well. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see who they go with and how the last month plays out.
Yeah, I mean, right. Again, it seems like every week there's something new developing and a new sort of entrant on the fringes of being a regional team. So with that in mind, I mean, it's a perfect way to segue over to Sean Stifler and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, who had a monster weekend. And now suddenly they're kind of creeping around the regional picture. So I tweeted this out, but I'm going to reiterate here. Notre Dame has now won 10 of their last 12 games, including 3 straight ACC series wins. Their sophomore catcher, Carson Tenney, in those 12 games is 24 for 45. It's a .533 batting average. He has 10 home runs, 60 total bases. For those, maybe not great with math, 60 divided by 12 games would be 5 total bases per game. I mean, that is an incredible pace. His OPS for the season now is over 1,300. Tenney has been like maybe the hottest hitter in the country in the past month or so. And he's a huge part of what's gone right for the Fighting Irish. You've been on them for a bit, sort of since the beginning of this run. You really like their starting pitching as well. What else has stood out for Notre Dame?
Yeah. I mean, you go back, I think 3 weeks and they drop a really tough series at BC. They lose a pair of 1-run games after winning the opener. And it's, they're, I think 4-14. Like they played a gauntlet before that, but the signs have always kind of been there especially with Jack Riddell and Rory Fox as sort of a 1-2 punch. And in the first 20 games, Tenney, as we're talking about, first 20 games of the year, so he tore his ACL last year. So you would expect a kind of slow start. And he's a catcher. So you got to deal with getting back into catching after tearing your ACL and rehabbing and everything. So he's hitting like 200 through the first 20 games. And and he starts to go off. And that's just sort of, elevated things around him. And so now you have a team that is getting really great starting pitching, Friday, Saturday, and even this weekend against Louisville, Jackson Denny's was really good. So you have good starting pitching. You've settled into some bullpen roles. So, you have Toby McDonough, veteran, Ricky Reith, veteran, like guys to go to in close games that can get it done. And then you have by OPS, the best hitter in college baseball over the last month, surrounded by guys that are, coming up with hits when needed, like Connor Hanks, freshman, Bino Waters. And so you just kind of blend that all together and you have a team that, yes, they lost a ton of games in conference play, but they also played the whole top half of the conference essentially. And so they finally get Cal, Stanford, sweep them, 6 wins. And then they get Louisville, first like real test since kind of going on this streak. And they just win a great series where they lose the opener for the first time in, like a month, I think. But they just come right back and really battle. And Tenney, the most impressive thing from the weekend, when he went 4 for 5 in the second game, his 4 hits, exit velos. Keep in mind, hard hit ball is anything like 95 and above. His exit velos were 114, 113, 112, and 109, which is just absurd.
It is incredible what Sean Stifler has been able to do in pretty short order with that team. And there are some similarities here because you've got experience in some places, but in other cases, you're depending on, again, a sophomore who was hurt last year. A freshman in Bino Waters, who we haven't named our all ACC all name team yet for this season, but especially given impressive play as Waters has had, Bino's a lock. I'd love that ad for them. And again, there's youth, there's some sustainability with what Stiff has going on at Notre Dame, similar to what we were just talking about with Arteaga at Miami. And it's not as much, okay, this is the way in 2025, like bring in some rentals. It's great to see because, again, I don't know that there's a program in the league that I would say, or I would not say, sort of similar to what we were talking about with Miami. Like the ACC baseball scene is better when they're good, but it's the teams that have been good at certain points that you say that about, right? And Notre Dame got to a certain point Link Jarrett got them to that point and then left to go to Florida State. So it's I think fair for us to have been like, okay, are the Irish going to keep this pace? Are they going to keep some of that momentum that was left by Link Jarrett and his coaching staff? And I think the returns in a couple of years now with Sean Stifler are pretty good, and it's reason to believe. I mean, who knows? They might be a regional team this year. If not, they certainly are going to come into next year with some cause for encouragement. It's a good thing. It's a very, very good thing.
Yeah, and I mean, talking to Stifler before the year, it was, we feel better about our pitching. We got more experience there, but we're going to be young in the lineup, and we're going to go through some things. And they've definitely gone through some things. But Bino Waters, Parker Brustevich, like those are cornerstone pieces. And Tinney's a sophomore. You get him back next year too. So I think they have a really strong core, and I think you're spot on where it's kind of like, if they get to a regional this year, you're ahead of schedule. I don't think that was expected coming in, and they have a really good shot to do so. They of course are going to play the other really hot team, Miami, to end the regular season, and they have Bowling Green this weekend. They got to take care of business there, but the path is there, which is when you look at a team that's 4-14 in the ACC, you start writing teams off kind of early. But that underlying, we put our faith in these guys. We're not going to stray from that. They're going to learn a lot, and I think they've done that.
There's also, again, as we get closer to postseason play, we got to remind you there's the ACC tournament as a potential aid in an effort to get into a regional, and it's just going to be. I think it's different from years past with the tournament, because if we're talking about Notre Dame, maybe they're a bubble team going into the tournament in Durham. All right, if you play a higher seeded team and you lose that game, you're done. Then you await the selection show. That's different than if you show up in Durham and you got to play 3, and maybe you drop 2 of 3 to higher seeded teams and then beat a team that you're ahead of in the standings. It's less impactful on the negative side, I think. Whereas if you're Notre Dame, you pull off a couple of wins at the DBAP, and you can greatly improve your case to get into a regional. So in addition to a very important final series against Miami, you've got some upside with the tournament in a way that, sure, with pool play, you did have 3 games that you could win, but you also had 3 games that you could lose, and then boom, you're done. Like, you're toast if that happens. So I think it's a better path than maybe it would be with all else the same, except for the tournament.
Yeah. And I think Notre Dame can get in, using that path without winning that final series. Like, say they don't get swept there, you take 1 of 3 for Miami on the road, be a good series. Then you go win another game. I think you're in. So I'm really excited for the ACC tournament. We keep talking about the parity. I think it's going to be an unbelievable week of potentially chaos, considering how everyone is playing right now.
It's beautiful synergy, right? It's okay. The season that the conference makes the move to go to all 16 teams getting in single elimination is the season that literally everyone beats everyone. It's perfect. It's perfect to me. I want to move on to a team that didn't play, but I've got them this week for a midweek against Campbell. And they, again, are a top 5 team in our D1 top 25. North Carolina. And this is partially to preview this coming weekend, too, because they've got a big rivalry series hosting NC State. This is a totally different team. It is well documented my concerns about the Tar Heels for much of the season. But let me give you some numbers for the month of April. Remember, they're yet to play in the month of May. The Tar Heels went 14-3, 9-3 in conference in the month of April. Series wins against Duke, Wake Forest, Virginia Tech, and Pitt. They averaged 9.2 runs per game. They outscored teams by a total of 83 runs. They scored 10 or more 8 times. The Heels hit 30 home runs. 9 of those were Gavin Gallagher, who slashed 348, 443, and 1246 for his OPS. So 803 was his slug. I mean, again, we were talking about Gallagher as like as sluggish as you could possibly start a season through 6 weeks? And he's been scorched earth. 27 runs driven in, 20 runs scored. He's a huge part of what is happening with the offense. But the other guys have stepped up too. Kane Kepley, who has been good, has had his moments and been even better in the month of April. The pitching remains really, really solid. North Carolina is starting to change my mind. I know we started this whole thing with talking about Clemson and Florida State as far and away, I think the two best teams, or at least by a gap, a sizable gap, the two best teams. But North Carolina, with some success in these final couple of weeks, could for sure change my mind about closing and locking the door on that top tier.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hitting's the point. It makes that point for you. And I know Scott Forbes didn't like hearing about it throughout the start of the year. But they weren't hitting very well. Like Stokely went off. Stevenson had, a couple multi-homer games. Like they had moments, but they didn't have a complete lineup. And they were shuffling a lot of guys around. And now you look up, and I think like Alex Madera is hitting 410 over the last month. And you just have, I think 7 of 9 everyday players are hitting over 300 over that span. And it's that Stanford series to start ACC play, they lose to Stanford, they lose to Louisville. And then they've won 6 ACC series in a row. Like, I think it's been kind of a quiet, just they keep moving up the rankings. They keep getting the job done. They win, kind of crazy games against Duke and, Virginia Tech. There's all kinds of fireworks. But I think it's just a very business-like approach at this point, both from the depth they have on the mound to everyone's just passing the baton in the lineup. And I think that makes them really scary. Like, they're turning into the team we expected. Like when you put together a projected lineup at the start of the year and, you're circling names, you had a lot of names circled of guys that had done it before or were, really good as freshmen, all of these things. And now you have everyone kind of doing it on top of a pitching staff that is the best in the ACC by most metrics. Like, yeah, that they should be in that top, tier. And I think the rankings kind of bear that out, where they're up to 4 nationally without playing.
Yeah, it's wild. Again, in my deep diving for this game, I've got as we record this tomorrow on Tuesday against Campbell, they're to a point where, again, I was not sold. I don't know that many were sold on the offense, but if you look now on the season numbers, Hunter Stokely's their only everyday player who does not have a 900 OPS or better with runners in scoring position. I mean, and some of them, you got to get over 1,000 to where it truly kind of gets some oohs and ahs. So some of them are way above that. Alex Madera's, for instance, is 900 on the nose. But every single one of their everyday players, except for Hunter Stokely, who has bona fides, we know he's capable in big spots. Every single one of them, 900 or better. Stevenson is 1,000 plus. Vanderbrake is 1,000 plus. So there aren't, 920 for Gallagher. So those are still good numbers. It's panning out for them is all. That's one of many ways I'm sure that I could find numerically to say it's panning out for those guys. And Madera is a big piece of that. Vandenbrink had a hot stretch during that run. You're right. It's contributors from up and down the lineup, which bears a resemblance to what we thought this team could be offensively. And then, of course, we all had high hopes, I think, for Jake Knapp coming into the season. Not totally aware that he was going to be ace material as he has been. And the rest of the pitching staff as well, right? I mean, we thought it would be good. So it is coming to fruition maybe as we thought, which is kind of the theme of amongst those North Carolina teams right there. NC State faltered, but they're back where we kind of thought they would be. So it's cool. It leads into a great series undoubtedly this weekend. I mean, this is a series that in Chapel Hill specifically has had walk-off safety squeezes happen in recent years. Some really, really fun games. So it'll be exciting to see.
Yeah, and it's a big one. Second and third in the conference standings. So would expect a shakeup in whichever direction there. But yeah, I think it's fun to see. I think one of the hardest things about covering college baseball is what you write at the start of the year versus what plays out in a 56 game schedule with college students at the end of the day. Like, it's much less, if you cover the pros, there's still a lot of storylines, but you get, there's more expectations and consequent, like it just plays out more predictably, I feel like, on an average level. But yeah, you just get
also worth noting, professionally, they're going to play over twice as many games. So yes, there's something to the larger sample size. What is truly the average occurrence is going to happen more.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. But yeah, and I think that's one of the things where it's like North Carolina on paper at the start of the year is now North Carolina, but it's May. Like it takes time and some bumps in the road, or a prolonged stretch of, hey, yes, they are what we thought they were. But I think it's one of the fun things to see, and I think that series this weekend is going to be incredible.
Anything else stand out? Anybody we didn't mention? I mean, Pitt with a big sweep. AJ Nessler was awesome this weekend. Don't want that to go unmentioned. I've got them this weekend, actually. I'll be at Wake Forest for their series against the Demon Deacons. So excited to see Mike Bell and company for that. What else? I don't know. What else stands out? Louisville still ranked 20th. Still capable of scoring a lot of runs. I mean, right. We are still in on them, still in on the Cards. Anything else? I mean, what else interests you?
Yeah, a couple of things there. One about Louisville, they are 4 for 4 home series wins in the conference, 0 for 4 road series wins. They're just not very good on the road. Overall, 25-4 at home, 5-10 on the road, which small sample size, 15 games versus 29 games. But they also played a lighter schedule outside of the conference at home, obviously, to help kind of run up those numbers. But that is something to think about when you're like, okay, they're going on the road for a regional. How do they do? I think Notre Dame held them to the big difference this weekend with that series was Notre Dame starters, I think, had 18 combined innings with 4 runs allowed. Like, that's not the Louisville offense where they love jumping on teams out of the gate. So that stood out to me from that one. And then Pitt, yeah, I think that I'm happy for Pitt. Obviously, they were the last team without a series win, but they'd had a lot of chances. Like, they took one off North Carolina. They'd played a couple rubber matches, played a rubber match with Miami as well. I think the bigger storyline coming out of that game is Virginia Tech's probably feeling like it's 2023 or 2024 again, because this is now 3 years in a row where it's just I kind of unexplainable. Like, they have injuries that they've dealt with, but they've also played really well when some of those guys have been out. But it's just it's another kind of nosedive. I think they're now I pulled this stat from mid-April on over the last 3 years, including ACC tournament. They're 9-24 against ACC teams in that final stretch, which is just terrible. Like all 3 of these years, they've been ranked at some point. They've been on the bubble, and they've just kind of played themselves out. Like a sweep at Pitt kind of craters their bubble chances. So I think that's pretty interesting. Explanations are hard when that happens 3 years in a row.
Yeah, that's really tough, especially given the promise that all 3 of these teams had at various points, right? I mean, we heard all the praise that John Sheff gave in the preseason. Each of the past 2 years, it was, hey, this reminds me an awful lot of a pretty good team I had here a couple years ago. But again, like we talked about at the beginning of the year, Bradley, like if Notre Dame's going to make a run at it, if Miami's going to be a viable team, if the teams that we think are going to be atop the conference are going to be are good and atop the conference, somebody's got to lose these games, right? Including, and this is my last point, and it brings me no joy, number 15 and 16 in the conference currently, Stanford and Cal, the West Coast teams. And again, Stanford ranked at one point this season, loads of talent, loads of potential. It's just not gone their way. And I think as the season went on, there is a reasonable argument that the cross-country travel maybe left these guys weary in both cases. It's hard to isolate because, again, these things happen for teams that don't have to travel that much. But again, I think there's a reasonable argument to be made. And again, this brings me no joy, but the race that I'm watching as the season comes to a close is the 15-16 shuffling there between the West Coast teams. Or if somebody else bumps down into the mix, it would be good for Cal and Stanford because that 16th seed, buddy, they play at 9 a.m. Eastern on the first day of the ACC Baseball Championship in Durham. 9 a.m. Eastern, you might know, is 6 a.m. Pacific time. Not that the team won't be here, they'll get adjusted. It should be okay. But for fans of that team that are local to that team, 6 a.m. we're gonna be on the ACC network with that first game, and it's gonna be like a West Coast morning wake up show.
Yeah, I'll give you 2 things here. First, Stanford this weekend, I was impressed with them because Joey Volchko looked great. Yeah, kind of for the first time in a while. He's had a really up and down year. B, Aiden Keenan looked great in relief. He's also had kind of a tough stretch. C, Nick Dugan is awesome. He throws 7 innings on Monday in a midweek win. They bring him back on Sunday. He pitches into the 6th. 12 2/3, 2 earned runs. That's a good week of work. But what I take away from that game is that series win, particularly with Volchko, Keenan, and that lineup, that's a team that can win can win the first game at the ACC term. Like that's a recipe for winning. And if you can get just a little bit more consistency out of the pitching, I like Stanford a bit more this week than I did last week. I'll say that. Reactionary take. On the other side, they're at NC State to close the year. So they got the built-in zero, well, not zero, but very little travel to the tournament.
Yeah,
so I think
they'll likely just stay in the same hotel even.
Yeah, so Cal's gotta do some things in their six home games remaining in conference play because it's not looking good for them because they're home. So then and Boston College is going to be there that weekend too. So that's something else to consider. And last thing, I know I'm rambling about Stanford, Boston College. My dad's a Mariners fan. Felix Hernandez was the king of just gem after gem with no run support.
Yep.
Like it was just brutal. He won the Cy Young with, I think, a losing record or close to it, like barely any wins. AJ Colarusso for Boston College has turned in 2 career starts. He went 8 1/3, or no, he went 8 complete, 2 runs allowed last week against Miami, loses 2-1. He goes 7 1/3 against Stanford, 1 run allowed. They lose 2-0. I want to highlight that performance because it'll get lost because he's 0-2. But that's an unreal run. I think like 14 strikeouts or something total. But that's tough.
And he was good at Wake Forest and had the start and then the relief appearance. And again, ultimately that was a series that BC won. But it was, scraping runs across, right? It wasn't necessarily an offensive onslaught from BC when he was on the mound. So, that's unfortunate for him. I like Colarusso a lot. He's one of my favorite guys in the league.
Yeah, he's a grinder, for sure.
You say, this is my last thing, you say you're higher on Stanford than you were a week ago. It brings up an interesting question, and one that, like our ACC head coach or coach of the year discussion, had not occurred to me until you just were talking the way that you were talking. All 16 teams make the ACC tournament. Is there a lower seeded team we think could haul off a run and win the whole thing? Like what would the lowest seeded team that we think can win the whole thing be?
Yeah, that is a good question. Because so the top 4 get 2 buys.
It's a double bye for the top 4, single bye for the top 8.
So we're talking 9 through 16. Who can win? What is that? 4 games?
4 games, right? You'd 4 or 5. Hold on. You'd have to win Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, right? So it'd be 5 consecutive wins.
Yeah. I don't know why I can't picture the bracket in my head right now. Yeah, I mean, to do that, you need pitching. Consistency or really good offense. I'm looking at the table right now. I mean, Wake isn't in the top 8 right now.
Wake is 10th.
That's a team that they had a weird weekend against Gardner-Webb. We didn't really talk about it, but kind of needed to rally twice. One game got suspended, tied 3-3 in the 9th. But I think Wake is out of that group. Wake's probably the team because you can line up the pitching. They have a lot of arms. Duncan Marston's coming on, and that lineup can do things. I do worry that they defensively have had enough issues this year that they could play themselves out of one. I don't think any of them ultimately will, just because it's the tournament stacked the way it is for the seeds. But I do like Virginia because they're outside the top 8 as well at 9. I would probably go Virginia or Wake Forest, which is a cop out because they're 9 and 10. But if I had to pick one later in it, that's tough. I just don't think any of those have enough depth on the mound to pull that off, because that's asking a lot.
I'll tell you what. Of the bottom ones, these are long shots, of course, but give me BC or Stanford. BC. You could enter Donato and his staff could engineer some wins. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, en route to winning 5 in a row, maybe they game a couple of them and win close in not pretty fashion. I mean, honestly, they could do that 4 times and then the offense just outscores everybody one of those days. And Stanford, again, we've seen with the pitching, especially at their best, all at the same time, it could be a really, really good team. We just haven't, there's no reason to predict that. But it could happen.
That's a good question. I would take Stanford's I think I would take Stanford's lineup, like best day at the park.
Yeah.
I think I would take Stanford's lineup, but I think BC, if they get into a bunch of small ball games and everything, the pitching, which this has not happened this year, but say Colarusso gives you length. Brady Miller's been pitching really well. Gavin Soares win 4 shutout innings against Stanford. He makes a start. JD Ogden has been stretched out. You get length from all 4 of those guys, and you just mix and match. Joey Ryan closes like 3 games in 4 days. I can't see Stanford pitching doing that. I don't think, just based on, but I've seen BC's pitching rise to the occasion. If you like this weekend, the rubber match blew up early, like 7 runs charged to their starter, but there was nothing from like the 4th inning on, when they were just throwing kind of random guys. So that score looked pretty bad. Obviously they came back some, but I think BC would, in a perfect world where everyone has their best stuff, I think BC has more options that can give more length than Stanford does. So I'd give them the edge on the ultimate underdog run.
Yeah. I like that. That's a fun game. Something to consider as the final 2 weeks flesh out here. So Bradley Smart of ACC Extra filling in for Danny Graves today. If you have not yet done so, get your D1 Extra subscription. ACC Extra access gives you reciprocal access to SEC Extra, so you get to read Joe Healy and Mark Etheridge over there and the great stuff that they do, in addition to keeping up with the haps on your ACC squad while we make this stretch run with just a couple of weeks remaining in the regular season. Bradley, any parting wisdom, words, anecdotes?
I would say buckle up.
That's good.
Buckle up, especially with the seeding. We'll just go with that. I have no idea what the final order of the teams will be in 2 weeks, and that's fun.
I love it. Buckle up. We'll leave it at that. Poignant as it is. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching on ACC Baseball Etc. Gravy's going to be back next week. We will catch you then. Enjoy the games this week. We know we will.